Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Huddle Postgame Live show. I'm Mark Givler, joined by Devin Radcliffe as always. Wow. I hope everyone's heart held up for that. That was quite a roller coaster. That was about, I think, as many highs and lows as I think I've seen in one 60-minute Ohio State game in quite a while. Buckeyes survive a scare in Happy Valley, 44-31, undefeated season still alive, playoff still alive. And now setting up, I think, what a lot of people were expecting, an eventual showdown with Michigan, which will decide the representative for the Big Ten championship game. So we kind of got rid of all the crazy tiebreaker scenarios with that. But holy cow, Coach, how do you sum that up, what we just watched?
I hope everybody is with us, first and foremost. That had everything you just said. It had the highs, lows, ups, downs, good, bad, uglies, and incredibles all at the same time. If you want to make a run at it, you got to figure out what your guys are made of. And this is the type of game where, when things were ugly and things weren't going well, nothing was working right, offense, defense, both sides of the ball, we may have found out what some guys are made of for a stretch, for a run at it here at the end of the season.
There's so many things we can talk about. I mean, we could go down 5 or 6 bad negative rabbit holes. There's several positive rabbit holes we could dive down too. I mean, I don't even know where to. There's not like one or two things here that's like, oh, these are the obvious 2 things we have to talk about. There is so much to unpack from this game. But I guess I will start with one positive. JT Tuimoloau, holy cow. In the pantheon of defensive line performances, that is so far up there with just being a total game wrecker. Gosh, I mean, I'm trying to think of a performance like that out of an Ohio State defensive lineman. I'm sure there have been some. I know Chase Young wrecked a game in Happy Valley a few years ago. Maybe that's the last one. Just your thoughts on JT's play. What a breakout performance.
Was it Wisconsin 2019? Chase Young had something like 4 sacks or something like that, and we're just absolutely dominated. This was that type of breakout game everyone has been waiting on, myself included, to see from him. And you saw why he was the number one, if I'm not mistaken, number one, not defensive line, but number one player in his class. And you saw the type of impact he can make. I mean, he had the pick 6 obviously at the end to put the game away. The fumble, I mean, he did it all, impacted the game every time he was on the field. Everything that everyone's been waiting on, you saw from him in this game today. And again, it's up there probably with, again, the Chase Young 2019 game is the first one that comes to mind in terms of the all-time great defensive line performance we've seen. I mean, you got to talk about that. I'm going way back now, but the Big Daddy and what was it, 91 or 92 against Washington, was one of those all-time incredible defensive line performances. This game was definitely up there in Ohio State history for a defensive line performance.
And it was to me, it was so different than I think anything we've seen. We've seen guys go 3-4 sacks, kind of wreck the game as a pass rusher. This guy, first of all, he had 2 interceptions. One of them he houses, but the first one, he breaks on that ball like a free safety, diving catch. He bats the Harrison interception in the air too, so he gets kind of a hockey assist on that one. I'm struggling to come up with a game. I mean, again, I think there are games we can talk about that were maybe as good statistically or maybe similar impact on a game, but just the different things he did. I just don't remember a defensive end ever getting that involved in pass defense, I guess. I mean, snatching that screen, but I put on Twitter, I said, Zach Harrison and JT were wide receiver tight ends in high school as well. They played offense as well. They played 7-on-7. So I guess those skills were in play there today, but unbelievable. Let's jump real quick as we're going to wait. We're going to get to the press conferences as soon as they start. So hopefully we don't get interrupted. We can kind of finish some of our points here, but let's go back and kind of look at some of the ugly here. The Ohio State running game, nothing for 50 minutes, 52 minutes, whatever it was. I kind of have my thoughts, but I want to get yours first. What was happening out there that was keeping Ohio State for the second straight week from effectively running the football?
I think I talked about it in our Iowa post game line movement. Penn State was moving guys around, and they're getting penetration, and they're causing the running backs at Ohio State to have to run to what I like to say run to survive instead of run to gain yards. They're causing running backs to redirect. Offensive linemen are miscommunicating. Ohio State is, obviously under Coach Day has been a huge zone blocking team that requires the offensive line to work out these combination blocks to get to the linebackers. And when you miscommunicate or a guy's lined up in one alignment on the defensive side of the ball and post snap, he moves to another side. And if you're not able to account for that, that's where you're getting these negative plays. I think I saw Penn State had something like 6 or 7. I know maybe a little bit on the high side, but they had a bunch of tackles for losses in the first half. And that absolutely derails your drives. And, when you're a pressure heavy guy like Coach Diaz is at Penn State, you get Ohio State in predictable circumstances. You're able to bring all those exotic pressures that you're known for. And we definitely saw that in the first half. To jump ahead to the second half, and I'll give Justin Whitlatch losing his mind all the time over this. You saw Ohio State put away with what's called gap scheme, where you see the front side of the play, all blocks down on an angle. You add a blocker from the backside, backside puller there on Henderson's touchdown run. You saw Jones pull around, saw Rossi kick out. All of a sudden you get those angles. So all that movement and pressure doesn't necessarily matter as much because you're staying on, you typically hear coaches talk about staying on track, like a train track. You're staying on this angle and you're just going to block whoever shows up. Well, how's Ohio State put the game away there at the end? How's Henderson finally get that second level? And you see his explosiveness. We see Coach Day go to power from the I formation, go to gap scheme, and Henderson, you see why he was the number 1 running back recruit just a year ago, what he can do when he gets a second level. And that was, again, adjusting from being a zone run. Hey, we're going to go to gap. We're not hitting our combos. You know what? We're just going to gap it. We're going to train block it all down. We're going to pull around and get him second level and let him take care of the rest.
All right, let's throw it to Ryan Day now. He's at the podium. That's a good stopping point there.
Question, but that's playing football and that's competing. And Penn State's got one heck of a team, played really hard, and it doesn't come easy. But that being said, very proud of the way the team played, and especially in the fourth quarter. I thought C.J. Stroud was unbelievable in the fourth quarter. The way he played, JTT was off the charts, and Marvin Harrison. But it was everybody. Cade Stover, what can you say about that run he had? Clutch, and just the way that we played in that fourth quarter was tremendous. I'm proud of our guys.
Right behind him, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
You diagnosed the second week in a row with the run game didn't go in that first half. Any common dynamic you were seeing there, and then how did that affect how you were calling the rest of it?
Yeah, I'll wait till tomorrow to figure out that stuff. We're going to celebrate on this ride home and have some laughs together on the plane and enjoy it. And then we'll come back in tomorrow and figure out what we can do better. But I just, the way that we hit that long run there with Trey in the fourth quarter, wore him down, was tremendous. And then to go up the way we did, you could just feel the energy on the sideline. And, some things certainly we want better, but at the end of the day, great to get a win. And at the end of the day, when we go into these games, the expectation is to win. I know that's not everybody's expectation, but that's our expectation. Do we want to play perfect? Yeah. Do we want to win by 4 touchdowns? Yeah. But the expectation coming in here has to be to win. And that's what we did. And when you look at the scoreboard at the end, it says 44-31. But what was the story? And this story has its own unique tale. And, we always come out and want to do things better. But, to play the way we did in the fourth quarter was tremendous.
Over your left shoulder, Coach Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.
Yep.
Ryan, you've seen a lot of football. Where does that defensive performance by JTT rank, just singularly?
It's all kind of a blur the way it happened, but to intercept balls like that as a defensive end and get a defensive score, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. That's big time. And JTT has put so much hard work into this. He's an unbelievable player, but he's a better person, and you can see his talent. This is kind of his coming out party today. And he's been working at it. He's been nobody wants it more than he does. So in this stage, for him to play the way he did means a lot to him, and I think his teammates are very proud of him.
Right next door, Doug Maurice, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, this is very specific, but on Trey's touchdown run, looked like Cade got the edge guy and then went to the second level and got the linebacker, and Dewan came across and got the other linebacker. There's the lane for
portray, just like when you guys block it up the right way at that point in the game, how big is that? And those two guys making those blocks.
That's huge. Yeah, like you said. And, we'll have to figure out, what's going on with a couple things. But in that moment right there, we started to kind of wear him down, I think, a little bit up front, and it started to move the pile a little bit. And, again, I didn't see it from that angle. I saw the thing squirt out from my angle, and then Trey got on the safety and was out. But yeah, those guys were gritty and did a good job in protection. Penn State was bringing a lot of different things, and especially on third down there, it took us a while to sort that out. Not very pleased with the third down, but yeah, that was a huge play, that inside zone play that hit.
Right next door, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Brian, we have not been tested since the Notre Dame game. How important is it to have a test like this, or the last hostile crowd you're going to have all year, to kind of face that and get through it?
It's huge. It's huge because nothing comes easy in this environment against Penn State, who does a tremendous job. And there are times where things may become a little bit easy for us. And that's a different experience than this right here. This is totally different. And to respond the way we did and figure out what was going on in that is great. Because really the last time that kind of happened was a little bit in the Notre Dame game. I think it was the same score at halftime, maybe, right? Was it 14-13 at halftime? Was that what it was, 10-7? It was a close game at halftime, and then came out and played well in the fourth quarter. So that's the recipe when you're playing matchup games.
Any sense of mind moves?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Yeah, I'll try to find out.
Clay Hall, WSYX.
You've won a lot of games here, 42. Is this as satisfying a win as you've had?
Every game has its own story, and this is one that we'll be telling for a while. I mean, just the feeling of the emotion that was on the sideline during that fourth quarter when JT got that pick, when Cade broke those tackles for the touchdown. It reminded me of Ben Vick when he caught that one out here on the play, breaking through, and they believed. We knew it was going to take 4 quarters, and I think that's to your point. Like, we don't always have to play 4 quarters. We knew we were going to have to play 4 quarters today. And just looking at the numbers, I thought it would be 70 and 70. It was 60 plays on offense and 80 plays on defense. So, but that's something that I think we can really learn from moving forward and grow on.
Do you have any update on JSN? Is he out indefinitely?
No, I don't have an update right now. Yeah.
Over here to the right, Austin Ward, Rivals.
Ryan, can you take us through, as you said, 2-3 quarters where you're trying to find some footing maybe on offense? I mean, as a play caller, what was Penn State doing that was maybe frustrating you or you were searching for? And then what finally clicked? The way the afternoon played out, what were you looking for? What did you eventually find?
Yeah. Well, I thought we finally, got into a rhythm finding those seam routes in there. We hit a couple of shots on the outside. I thought the protection really was clean. I felt like we would have done a better job with the perimeter run game with the bubble throws. We got blown up on those a few times, and that really hurts. We struggled on third down early on. We got that solved, which was huge because they kept the drives going. And I felt like we could have done a better job on first down, staying on schedule. They do a good job of taking away a lot of the easy stuff. So it just, again, couldn't quite get her going in there. But we did have that one good drive, and I just, at the end of the day, when you're playing these type of games, I think you have to look at the body of work through 4 quarters. And I think we're all used to saying, all right, what do we do in the first half? And it's like, okay, but it's 4 quarters. And so when we're playing a matchup game like this, it's the whole story, and it finally clicked there at the end of the game.
That sequence right before halftime, did you think you had a timeout? The scoreboard said one thing, Fox Podcast had another. What was going through that decision-making process right there?
Yeah, we had 6 seconds left. I thought that we could take a shot in the end zone. We knew they were in zero coverage, and I was going to take the delay game and then just kick the field goal, but then felt like maybe CJ would know to throw the fade up and see if we could get it for zero coverage. We were not on the same page, he and I, but I'll take all the blame for that. It's totally not his fault. Shouldn't have been in that situation. 6 seconds left. Just kick the field goal, get some momentum into halftime. So I'll take all the blame for that one.
You weren't trying to call a timeout there. I mean, you weren't running. You kind of ran.
So I ran down, and as I was running down, I realized I had timeout.
Over to the right here, Dylan Davis, Delaware
Which
Gazette.
is not a good feeling.
I believe it was 2019 against Penn State. There was a timeout on the field. Everything was going wrong, and you told your team that at some point you have to be willing to take punches and respond. for somebody who's talked about toughness so much and how big toughness is for this team this year, what does this win say about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. That's what means everything to us right there, what you just said, because there's a lot of things that come into play here. Talking about the best quarterback in the country and C.J. Stroud, and JT's coming out partying, Marvin, and the score and what we did in the first half. But what you just said is everything. That's, to me, the difference between winning a championship, reaching our goals, or not. What you just said, and we responded today. And I think that's why it's so satisfying, is that we did that today. Can we clean things up? Yeah, but that's football, and you see it every single week. You see games go back and forth, and again, a lot of respect for Penn State, for James Franklin, for his staff in this environment. This is a hard place to play, and it always is. So for us to do that was, that locker room was on fire afterwards, and they deserve it.
Third row right, Cameron Teague Robinson, the athletic.
Brian, this defensive line talks a lot about not caring who gets a sack, not caring who gets the
Yeah.
JT this year is so close to a sack, put it in a hole.
Yeah.
It's a step too slow, that's about inch off. What's it been like to see his growth this year as he's kind of forgotten, not really cared about not putting up production and then the line has
like you said, he's been right there, kind of been almost like the unsung hero a little bit this year, close to it, get the guy off the spot. Maybe there's an interception. I think he had the one last week that they got the quarterback from Iowa off the spot, and then Tommy gets the interception. So like you said, he's been right there. He's been getting better every week. He's wanted it. He'll probably tell you he pressed a little bit at times. Like he's wanted to get there, and he's believed in Coach Johnston. He's believed in the scheme, and believes in his teammates. And like you said, those guys support him. And I think there's a really good group in the defensive line room.
We'll go a few more guys. Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, last week you talked to us about Zach and how important it was to get him at that point in time. You guys obviously had to wait quite a while for JT. Seeing him come full circle now and make plays like he did, say the coming out party, as you mentioned it, does that make that wait that much more justifiable? As weird as that was.
Yeah, no, I think they all pull for each other, and yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I just think that they. I think one good thing is we have so much depth there that they can play fresh, and Coach Jay rolls them in and out. And they feed off of each other, and they pull for each other. So yeah.
Deep center field, Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, you guys are down late and you scored 2 touchdowns in about 4 plays. What did you see from the sideline before those plays? What did you see from your team?
We had leadership. And Cade was there, but CJ led it. I don't know what CJ's numbers were in the fourth quarter, but he was tremendous to come in and play like that in this environment and go put the offense on his shoulders like that. And listen, it's everybody on offense, but boy, he was gutsy in this game. I'm proud of him.
Over to the left, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, just about overall defensive performance, obviously most points you guys have allowed this year. Just what are your kind of overall takeaways on how the defense played?
I thought they competed. When you're playing in a game like this, which I don't know if we mentioned it leading up to it, but I know we talked about it a lot. I don't know if we talked about it in the media, was that they're no huddle and we're no huddle. So the plays were going to be more, and it was going to be a 4-quarter game. So with that, this is what you're typically going to get. And they had their big plays, but they also had their turnovers too. And when we can feed off each other like we did, that's when we can flip the scoreboard. And would we have liked to have done it more? Sure, but that's a great challenge today that we responded to.
Bill Landis, Athletic.
Right. When you're throwing those bubbles, maybe this is wrong characterization, but it feels conservative for an offense that touts aggressiveness as much as you guys do. But I'm wondering, do they serve a purpose even if they're not efficient? Are you trying to soften them up with those plays, even if they're not blockable? Because in the fourth quarter you're going to end up on a team as much as you guys do.
Yeah, it's part of the run game, and what it does is it forces everyone to run to the other side of the field if you complete it. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And then you throw it on the other side, they have to run all the way across the field, and then before you know it, you can go that way. So we want them to defend the entire field, and if they put a lot of guys in a box, then we need to spread the ball out to the perimeter. So we always say that we want to be able to attack them inside, attack them outside, and then throw the ball down the field. And probably could have done that more in the game, but I think if we had done a little bit better job on the perimeter in that area, we could have cracked the rock sooner. But yes, I think you have the idea.
And last question, Joey Kaufman, the dispatch over here to the right.
Ryan, of all the plays that JT made, you have picked from, did you have a favorite? Or
Pick six. Yeah, when you get a defensive score like that, all of a sudden the whole game changes. It was a 2-score game at the time, right? So it was nine points. So I believe so, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I remember I was on headsets. Okay, so if they score and make it, a 1-point game or however that was, how are we going to play the game a little bit different? We get the ball back and it's a 2-score game. Be probably pretty conservative at that point. And then the next play is a pick. It was the first play of the drive, I think, right? It was a pick 6, and all of a sudden, you just throw it up in the air and say, "That's about it. We're good, boys." And the sideline just went nuts. So that was my favorite.
One quick,
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr. comes out of that game, gets banged up, goes back in, 10 catches, the third and 10 catch on that slant.
Tough. Tough.
Yeah.
Bringing zero coverage.
What did that? I mean, can you explain his day?
Tough. I think that's what it was. I mean, we know Marvin's talented, but to play tough the way he did says a lot about him. And he was gutsy today, like you said. Yeah, gutsy.
Right. I'm sorry. Just for context, what do you think of the Penn State secondary today?
The challenge, tough. They played hard, physical, like you said, kind of blew up some of the perimeter run game that we could have done a better job with. I think our guys competed against them, though.
All right, folks. Hey, folks, we're going to do our players outside our locker room on this backside.
All right, I think we're going to try and get James Franklin here.
I think kind of already covered that. Coming into this game, felt like we were going to have to score touchdowns to win the game. And I know obviously the focus is on the one we missed, but I think people like the 3 that we made.
Last question to Neil in the back.
James, regrouping emotionally after you were right there, with 6 or 7 minutes to go, how much of a challenge do you expect this week now? Our leadership's been great. PJ was great in the locker room right then. Losses are hard. They're hard around here at a place like Penn State where we have really high expectations and standards. But that's our job as coaches, and that's their job as players. To rebound as quickly as we possibly can, get the corrections made, and move on to our next opponent so we give ourselves the best chance to be 1-0 next week.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, we are back. Got a little bit of Franklin there at the very end. Most interesting thing I think I gleaned from Ryan Day is just kind of his thought process here on kind of how all that played out there with the decision making and things like that. I mean, Devin, what did you see there? There were several key decisions, and I'm not sure that Ohio State actually made the right ones on any of them, and it didn't end up obviously affecting the outcome of the game. But, as you watch this play out, talk me through your mindset on first the long field goal attempt that they missed, and then at the end of the half, deciding to try and get another playoff. There was 6 seconds left, and what happened there? I mean, your thoughts on kind of those two sequences.
My knee-jerk reaction was, I'm obviously not Coach Day, but or head coach D1 football. But my thought process was should have flip-flopped the decision making. You're kind of in that weird on the long field goal. You're kind of in that weird gray area. Do you punt? Do you just go for it? Do we take the long kick? I think it's one of those chances where, if you trust your defense and, Coach Day's decision making this year and Coach Knoll's defense, you might want to just take a shot, see if you get the first down. I'm not sure exactly what the yardage would have been if you would have punted it, inside the 10. You might, you gain a few yards, play some field position game there. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think you got to look at either going for it, being a little aggressive, or you punt and make them go 95 yards for a touchdown in that situation. And then at the end of the half, my in the moment knee-jerk reaction was, and I think, you heard Coach Day talk about it, catch, set, throw it up. And you might have a second left on the play clock. But I think given the circumstances, being on the road, the first half has been, an absolute as much struggle as Ohio State's had since Notre Dame, I guess, week 1. I think in hindsight, you want to kick the field goal, especially when it's in that higher percentage range, kick the field goal, take the points, and go into halftime with the momentum and with the lead, especially knowing you're not going to get the ball to start the second half. Points are crucial at this point. It's a back and forth, basically, old school field goal type game. Get the points, know your head going to halftime, going to play defense in the second half.
Yeah, I'm not sure the juice was worth the squeeze there at the end of the half. I mean, look, should CJ have got rid of the football? Yeah, of course he should have. But I mean, let's game this out. Okay, so everyone wanted him to just quick turn and fire it out to Harrison. Okay, that sounds good, except there are still outcomes there that can be harmful. First of all, when you're rushing a throw like that, you're not even thinking. You're auto throwing that.
Yep.
That could be you could get an inaccurate throw, get interception. The ball could be tipped in the air. How many tipped balls did we see today? How many times on both ends of the field for both quarterbacks, either at the line of scrimmage or out in the secondary, was a ball knocked up in the air today? A dozen? If that happens, 6 seconds could come off the clock.
Exactly.
So I thought that was overly aggressive, and I thought he was overly conservative. I agree with you. I thought he was overly conservative on the field. I thought the field goal, and I am so anti-punt inside the 40. I would have went for it. I just would have went for it. But I thought the field goal was the worst idea of the three there, just because we have no evidence that Noah's going to hit a 53-yard field goal. We have no evidence that Ohio State in that environment has a kicker that's going to hit that type of kick. We've seen that type of kick be disastrous in years past in Happy Valley. You got to kick them low at that type of distance. And, this will kind of carry us into the next thing I want to talk about. I thought even in the first half, when the offense was not consistently moving the football and not consistently putting points on the board, I thought it was pretty obvious that the vertical passing game, the intermediate passing game in the middle of the field was there for the taking for Ohio State. So I didn't feel that 4th and 6 was all that big of a burden. I thought they were actually in a pretty good spot to convert something like that, given how open the middle of the field was. I guess we'll snowball off of that. What did you see from the Penn State secondary that allowed Ohio State to sort of get going there really in the second half? But it just felt like they were missing some opportunities in the first half more than anything else.
Yeah, obviously not having scouted Penn State or breaking them down or anything like that, it seems to me that Coach Day and the offensive staff felt like the perimeter, obviously with all the bubbles we saw, was going to be where they could attack Penn State. I don't know if they're playing a lot of one high or used to playing loose coverage. But, as the game progressed, obviously, as you just said, the middle of field is where Ohio State was able to, hit the big plays, attack and split field safety coverage. So I don't know if this was another circumstance where, 2 weeks in a row, the scouting report basically goes out the window. Iowa, we saw last week, just completely abandoned character of Iowa football of too high, bend but don't break. And they came back and said, hey, you know what? We're going to play cover 0 and go for broke. And Ohio State took them a while to adjust offensively to what Iowa's actually giving them based on what they had scouted. So this could have been, again, I haven't a chance to watch much Penn State this year. So this could have been a circumstance where what Ohio State scouted and what they got were two totally different things. And it just took them until about what seemed like 38 seconds left in the fourth quarter to adjust offensively to what they were actually getting in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I know this may be oversimplifying things a little bit, but did Penn State essentially just copy what Iowa did last week? It certainly had some of that feel to me watching it, but as you break this down from as a defensive coach, is that kind of what happened here, or were there maybe some nuances to that?
Yeah, knee-jerk reaction watching it one time through, it definitely seems like the game plan is out on CJ Stroud of we got to take him off his mark, get him uncomfortable in the pocket, and take kind of some of that, we got to go for broke and get pressure, even if it doesn't hit home, make him stand in the pocket, make him stand up and make those clutch throws. And in the run game, we talked about this earlier, if we can cross face, even with the four-man front, if we can cross face and force those miscommunications up front, we can create some negative plays in the run game. So I think Iowa's really, going back to last week, has really been the one that's put the game plan out of, hey, this is how you get Ohio State off track, is with this line movement up front, force CJ Stroud to make throws with pressure in his face.
How does Ohio State in the run game, because I think we saw the throw game eventually come to life. And again, I thought even in the first half, I kept sitting there and I'm like, I think at one point Stroud was like 9 for 11 for, maybe like 120 yards. I'm like, why are they not continuing to force the issue on that? But the run game specifically, that this is 2 weeks in a row. And yes, Henderson did break one there in the fourth on an unbelievable combo block by Cade Stover. But what can they do, I guess, moving forward? Because I do think if other teams are smart, they're going to try it. They're going to try and replicate this and hope that they can do it for 4 quarters instead of 2.5 or 3 like the last 2 opponents have done.
I think it all comes back to constraint plays. Everyone talks about CJ Stroud keeping the ball really since Coach Day's been the head coach, keeping the ball in the read game and make him account for the quarterback as a runner. Obviously, that's not going to happen at this point, but there's got to be something built in, whether it's RPO, reverse, counter, something to get these teams and make them pay for, hey, if we see this formation, we're going to slant all 4 of our defensive linemen, just to keep it simple, towards Stover, towards the tight end. We're going to sell out, slant strong. Ohio State likes to run strong in this down distance formation, etc. We got to have a counter off that. If it's literal counter where we're pulling backside, running weak side, is it like we saw in the Utah with the post snap relief plays where CJ pulls it and throws it? Because we got the RPO game. There's got to be something to keep that defense honest and make them pay for selling out, stop the run with line movement and pressure.
Yeah, I mean, they're just daring them to throw over the middle, and there's so much. I'll throw out like kind of an amateur term here, but there's so much action around the line of scrimmage. So there's 4 down linemen, but they're bringing linebackers up, they're standing people up. It's like trying to confuse, not where's the pressure going to be coming from, who's going to actually drop off, and it just looks like they're daring those seam routes. And Stroud was making them today, though, in the 4th quarter. I mean, he made 3 or 4 throws in the 4th quarter I thought were unbelievable. I know, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is a star, and he had a great game, and he's there's not much else we can say about Marvin Harrison, but there were some throws that were made down the seam today, and that 4th quarter that I thought were the difference for Ohio State being able to put this away. So it's just like so just getting that running game going, and I guess how much time can you dedicate to that in practice versus, working on your own team and, versus preparing for what, again, teams aren't necessarily putting this on tape for you. They're kind of showing it to you on game day. So I guess how do you navigate that through prep in practice week?
Well, I think it's like you almost want to go like if you're an old – in high school ball, you talk about like wing T or double wing teams where you're like, all right, we're going to face some crazy defenses to stop our offense. You almost like you need to have a crazy defense period where like, all right, if we're going to sell out and, ask Coach Knowles, hey, if you're going to sell out and stop our mid zone and stretch run game, what are you going to do? All right, we're going to practice against this. So we might be able to prepare for what we could potentially see on Saturday from our opponent. That'd be my first thought. And again, it goes back to the constraint plays and complements off of your run game. One of the things I think is interesting to see is, Coach Day added this I formation component to the offense this year. And, not having the stats in front of me, it seems like that hits. We're seeing it in basically inside the 10 or inside the 5. But you saw Coach Day go to it with Travion Henderson's 2nd touchdown, if I'm not mistaken, was out of the I formation out of the red zone. I can't remember, was like the 30-yard line or so, or 25-yard line. So again, we go back to that gap scheme, like I mentioned earlier. We get mid-zone, got to get the combos, got communication right. All right, well, we're going to get in the I, and we're going to run power, wash everything down, pull and kick. And Travion goes untouched for 25, 30 yards. So that's another component you could add to your run game is more and more of that I formation gap scheme type run game. And, you can do it from the pistol. You can do all that from the gun. Gus Malzahn has made a living his entire career running, gap scheme, wing T stuff from the gun. So you implement some of those components off of what you already do. Next thing you know, you can't sell out as a defensive coordinator because, hey, you know what? This looks like it could be our mid zone. We sell out. Next thing you know, it's counter back the other way, and we're out the back door for 40 yards for a touchdown with Henderson.
And then, of course, Ohio State defensively, I thought, look, obviously JT was incredible. We talked about that right out in the opening to start the show off. I know that was kind of the first thing I wanted to talk about. But and Zach Harrison, I thought, had another strong game. I thought last week was as good as Zach Harrison's probably ever played. And he feels like he's just having such a strong season. I thought he played well again today. the back seven, what do you make of that today? There was some good there, but man, I thought this was one of their poorest tackling games on the season on the perimeter. I thought they struggled to tackle on the perimeter. Parker Washington had a huge game. How much of that was just maybe some guys having bad games? Was there anything concerning, I guess, for you as you kind of evaluate the secondary today in the defense back seven?
We heard Coach Knowles talk about this, I think, going back to week 1. You can win ball games when you give up 5 or less explosive plays. And to me, sometimes those catches happen. I mean, they're ball players too, but you got to be able to put the guy on the ground and make him snap the ball again. I think this was the first time all season where Ohio State was giving up those explosives where it was turning into 6. And, you obviously, first and foremost, I think the first touchdown Penn State had, 2 guys missed a tackle. I think it was Johnson and McAllister missed a tackle. And, that just can't happen. I'm trying to think of something witty or clever to say, but when you got 2 guys, 2 guys with a chance to make a tackle on what should have been a routine. Well, I don't know. I can't remember what the yardage would have been.
It was like a bubble. It was like a 2 or 3 yard gain.
So you get 2nd and 6. Yeah. Put the guy on the ground, make him snap it again. So that's just something that's just it just can't happen. You got to just rep open field tackle. I think early, first play of the game against Notre Dame, we saw Proctor get pulled for missing a tackle. I think this may be one circumstance where Johnson and McAllister are fortunate where they don't necessarily have the guy where they could pull him and put in and replace him, because that's a bad of missed tackles we've seen all season in that circumstance, especially when it turns into a touchdown. Later in the game, I think we had a bust in coverage, 2 plays in a row, I think, or in the same series where tight end got free for a huge play on a scramble. I think, just going off the top of my head here, I think Chambers lost him in coverage, if I'm not mistaken. And then later on, and later on, without watching it again, watching the second time through to see exactly what happened. And then Ransom get beat on an inside breaking route, where he lost leverage, goes for a touchdown. Again, I guess you could, accuse me of being an optimist here, but I think these are all things you can put on the film and fix in practice. It just can't happen. It just can't happen again in these types of games.
Right. Yeah. I thought JK had a tough day, and I actually think he's played pretty well, especially kind of getting thrown into the fire the way he has the last few weeks. But, got the PI was a really inopportune time. He totally got kind of lost there. The missed tackle on the bubble screen that got broken off for a touchdown. I mean, there were some obvious miscues there. I think until about some of those breakdowns you were talking about later on in the game, like in the fourth quarter, I was pretty optimistic about everything defensively, just because they weren't getting out schemed or anything like that. It was just, look, they were right there to make a play on the bubble. They didn't make the play. So there were a few things that I would chalk up to player error more than, this is Oregon all over again, and guys are we're getting outflanked, and you're watching the same play hit every time or whatever. But then there were a few, I think, breakdowns. Like you said, I think there was at least one busted coverage there late. But at the end of the day, though, even with the points and some of the chunk plays, the turnovers, I thought, were probably the difference in this game. I mean, without those turnovers, this might have went a little bit differently.
It's funny you bring that up. What was everyone talking about beginning of the year, or even midway through the season? This Ohio State defense doesn't have any turnovers.
Yeah.
No picks, no fun. Well, what won the game basically today was, would they have 4 interceptions? 4 turnovers?
4 turn. I think that's right. Yeah.
4 turnovers.
I'm going back trying to reel them off. Tuimoloau had 2 picks. Harrison had a pick. I'm missing something. The ball was on the ground a lot. I don't know if they didn't recover it every time, but yeah, I mean, to your point, yeah. I mean,
that was the difference in the game, was creating those, what I consider bonus possessions, where it's not a natural 3 and out punt type of change of possession. I mean, they were creating some opportunities for the offense through creating those turnovers. And that was the difference in the game, especially when you get in the higher scoring games where you got to maximize, your plays, that to get not just turnovers, but to turn them into points. Obviously, at the end of the game, to put the game away is huge for the defense.
Yeah, it is funny how this game played out versus, earlier in the season, like you mentioned, it was, well, yeah, the stats are nice, like the total yards against and the points against is nice, but what really needs to happen is they need to start forcing turnovers and getting after the court. So it is funny how there is some give and take with that. You're not, if you want to force turnovers, you're not always going to be able to, hold them to 150 total yards and force. Sometimes there's going to be some give and take where, to force a turnover, you're going to have to give up some big plays sometimes too, just the way stylistically. So today it worked. It was not for the faint of heart. Thank you, producer Shed, for this. Ohio State has won 25 straight when they forced 3 or more turnovers. So there's your stat of the game. So defense came up really big there. Opportunistic defense. Where are you at on Stroud's performance today? I'm only, I'm looking on Twitter, obviously. I'm looking on our website, on the forum, and a lot of people were on Stroud. I'm sure that, it's definitely in the first half, first 3 quarters, really. I didn't put this at his feet. I thought, there was no run game. I didn't like some of the decisions. I didn't like some of the play calling from the offensive staff in the first half. I thought generally when they let, this has become such a ridiculous cliche, but essentially when they let CJ cook, I thought he did what he was supposed to do. Just kind of, I guess, break down CJ's performance today and kind of, how you see his performance today and what that may mean for him moving forward. Are there things that are concerning out there, or did he kind of take what he needed to take today?
This almost, we talked about it kind of pre-show. It just almost seemed diet Rose Bowl, where it's once, we're like, hey, you know what? We really need CJ to step up and take this thing over. That he did. And I think that goes without saying. I mean, we were, Ohio State was down. I can't remember what the score was, but 3 plays later, 45 seconds or whatever, it was just 2 big clutch throws and Henderson run. Next thing they're, after they've been almost asleep, it seems like, for 3.5 quarters, they're back up. I'd like to see the score breakdown quarter by quarter, because it seemed like they, what was it, halftime, 13 points, and, final score ended up 44. So they scored 20 points thereabouts in the second half. And a lot of it had to do with
31 in the second half.
31 in the second half. I can't remember exactly what I'm not trying to count the picks.
It was 14-13 at half, because they did,
okay.
As we agonized over earlier, they didn't take the field goal there at the end of the half.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, you see him when the lights are the brightest, and you need him to step up. Seems like once his adrenaline gets pumping, he just lets it rip, and you see him take over a game again. Just like I go back to the Rose Bowl performance, where it's just absolutely, hey, we don't have the only way we're going to win this game is you take it over. And this is one of those type of games where we can't run the ball. Penn State's hitting some things on offense, so we can't just punt and play defense all game. And he took it over.
Yeah, I thought, I won't go full Heisman moment yet, because ultimately, fair or not, he's going to be judged by that Michigan game in a few weeks.
Yep.
If he loses that game, even if he, I thought he played well in last year's game. If he loses that game, I think that's going to put quite a stain on the season for a lot of people, and even for his Heisman stuff. And I think if he wins that game, even if it's not a statistically dominant performance, if he just handles his business, manages the game, that could propel him. So I'm not going to call today a Heisman moment, but I think it's going to be one of those things when you look back, if Ohio State's able to, perform and do what they're supposed to do what they're aiming to do here the next month or two, and we do see CJ in New York City and Hoist, I think we're going to look back on this fourth quarter as, potentially a turning point, because they needed him to come through in a big way, in a way that he really hasn't had to do or been able to do other than the Rose Bowl. And he was able to, God, those throws down the seam, man. I'm telling you, I know I talked about those a few minutes ago. Those were special throws, I thought. And to your point, I thought you made a good point. There's this notion out there that you see the word soft get thrown around. I don't see that. And you mentioned this, when he gets, I don't say rattled, but when he gets roughed up a little bit or things aren't going perfect, he seems to be able to use that as fuel. And we seem to see this other side of him come out. And, did you see that in him? Like today in the fourth, it felt like that was there, where it was like, okay, I got to make this throw 20 yards down the seam. Defensive backs got good coverage. I got to put this low and away for Marvin. Did you see that out of him today?
Yeah, two things come to mind as we're sitting here talking about it. There's a Coach Meyer, 15-second clip running around on the internet about when I needed you the most, you gave me your very best. And that it may not necessarily be a Heisman moment, but it's definitely one of those moments of like, Ohio State is not winning this game unless CJ Stroud takes it over. And he definitely did that. And again, it goes to, like we saw even last week a little bit when things weren't going right against Iowa, that adrenaline gets pumping, the old Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. When, CJ Stroud's like, all right, I'm hit, I'm shook, nothing's working. Okay, I'm ready to play ball. I mean, some kids, and I've coached them, where it's just like, all right, everything's awful. Now I'm ready to play ball. Like, I don't know why you're doing this to me. Why are you making this so stressful for everybody? But I appreciate it nonetheless. And that seems to be, what we've seen from CJ Stroud the past 2 weeks of, all right, everything that's gone wrong now I'm ready to take it over. Can, in a couple weeks, at the last game of the year that everyone's got circled, is that going to be enough? Or do we need to be able to figure out, like, hey, we need to jump out early. We can't wait around for you to kick in the third quarter when we're down 20-14. So that's something to watch going forward is can he, like you just mentioned, is this the turning point of like taking that next step of, all right, if I'm really that guy, I'm going to do this for four quarters and just absolutely take this thing over from here on out.
Yeah. Couple defensive numbers. It looks like Tommy Eichenberg, 15 tackles. And I knew he had a high there. Well, there we go. We got Eichenberg with 15, Chambers with 9, Ransom 7. And there's the numbers on Tuimoloau. We've talked about him so much this post game, but 6 tackles for JT, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. One of them he returns for a touchdown. He deflects another pass that's intercepted. Just again, guys who have been their best players on defense, stepping up with Steele and Tommy with 24 tackles there. There was a point there, that whole crazy, we haven't even really talked about this, that crazy sequence there where Penn State misses 2 chip shot field goals. But inexplicably, they still have the football. They go for it. They get it. And then, Eichenberg, for all the great things he's done, and I've got him as a Buckeyes finalist right now. I think he should be at the ceremony. Has Katron Allen in the backfield on that 4th and inches on the goal line. Doesn't make the play. Allen gets through, scores. We've talked about the offense kind of getting punched in the face a little bit, getting going. Were you impressed, I guess, with the defense coming back? That could have been a back-breaking sequence for the defense because you think you have them stopped like 4 times in the red zone. They missed 2 field goals. You have a 4th and 1 opportunity. You don't get that. They fumble it at the goal line. You don't get that. There's all sorts of, key moments to this game that appear to be going the other direction. The bounces aren't going your way. I guess, we talk about the offense doing this, getting punched in the mouth, overcoming adversity. How it looked like the defense did the same thing in the 4th quarter. I mean, how impressed were you with the way they were able to bounce back from that sequence?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, that was probably one of the more, I guess, goofy is a nice way to put it, sequences of football I've seen in a while where you don't just get saved by the referees once, you get saved by twice, on 2 field goals in a row. And then, I'll just bring it up. I'm going to have to see I'm going to have someone explain to me how that was a penalty on Cage in the first place. I guess you could potentially say because he went over the center's shoulder. I don't know if the center held his head down the entire time to draw that penalty, but they called it a formation, so I'm not sure. I'm going to need an explanation.
That would indicate, calling it a formation, that would indicate a pre-snap, right?
Yeah, and again, I need an explanation.
You can't, hurdle all this. You can't hurdle the center, all that stuff now it's going on. So I almost let my real feeling fly. But but that wasn't the call. It was a formation. which would indicate pre-snap. And he did shift a little bit to his left,
But
just
the one
ever so slight. But I don't think he covered. I don't know. It didn't, to me, I don't know if he violated the technical aspect of the rule. It didn't seem to violate the spirit of the rule to me, but maybe Parker Fleming will be available this week to talk about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna need someone to explain to me an illegal formation on the defense penalty, because I don't think I've ever heard that one. But not, to your point though, that could have been a backbreaking drive of especially when you're dealing with 19, 20-year-old kids of all right, nothing's going our way. It's Penn State, nothing's working here. But to their credit, especially when they fumble on the goal line and they score a touchdown on a fumble. I mean, obviously they didn't score it on the fumble, but they next play they punch it in. So, nothing's going right in that drive. And, very easily 19, 20-year-old kids, they could have said hey, you know what? This isn't our game. This isn't going to work out for us. It's Halloween weekend, whatever, bad batch of candy, whatever you want to say. And they're able to bounce back and make the plays when they needed them. Obviously, JT lived up to all the billing. You saw him take that next step, and you can't talk about that performance enough. From what we saw, 2 interceptions from defensive end, pick 6, forced fumble, incredible, taking the game over. But see, the defense in general really stepping up, and you want to talk about CJ Stroud taking a game over in the fourth quarter. Well, he can't do it if he doesn't get the ball back.
Right.
And the defense was able to make enough plays to get that ball back to CJ Stroud. And even when Penn State got some juice going there, they held them there. I'm trying to remember exactly off the top of my head. They held them to a field goal there when it was a
long field goal.
9-point game, and they hold them to a field goal. Okay, obviously you don't want to score at all whatsoever. I mean, that's a given. However, to force them to a 40-yard field goal or whatever when the kicker had been shaky, that was a big stop when Penn State had some momentum going, and it looked like they're getting ready to punch it in and make it a 3-score game or 2-score game. So you're exactly right. You saw a lot of, backs against the wall. You see them come out swinging.
Yeah. Again, I thought a year ago, these bounces, I mean, look, we can go back. Eichenberg tips a ball, goes right to the Penn State guy, corrals it. Could have been interception, certainly could have been incompletion. Instead, it's a positive play for Penn State. They keep marching. Penn State fumbles the opening kickoff. I mean, of the second half.
Yes.
On the return. And the ball appears, and I forget who. I'm not going to get the right players. I'm not even going to say which player it was, because I don't remember who it was specifically. But the ball essentially looks to pop out into the lap of an Ohio State player. And there's a scrum, and they don't get it. And you had 4, 5, 6 bounces, bad breaks, whatever you want to call them, go Penn State's way from the beginning of the third quarter until about the middle of the fourth quarter. And last year, when those things happened, it snowballed very quickly on Ohio State. They folded under easier conditions a year ago in games against Oregon, games against Michigan. I thought this was a continuation of a tougher team today, as frustrating at times as maybe some of the decisions, some of the play calling. Yes, there were some missed tackles. There were mistakes made. This was not a clean game by any stretch. But from a mental toughness standpoint, I thought this was another data point that leads us to believe that, this isn't last year's, one thing goes wrong and we pack it in.
I think if you go back and look at the Penn State game in general over the past 10, 15 years, they are not – this is almost in the cliche forget the record type game going into it. It's very rare you see Ohio State blow Penn State out of the water. I think 2013 was the only real blowout when it was 60 whatever to 21 or something like that. But Penn State, year in and year out, regardless of record, gives Ohio State all they can handle. And that's at all the makings of a Penn State upset. The way some of the like you explained, this could have very easily been a game that broke Penn State's way. And for the upset on the road, Halloween weekend, coming off the big Iowa win, the ball is literally bouncing Penn State's way every chance it presents itself. And these guys found a way to dig in, one play at a time and make enough plays, obviously, in the fourth quarter to hang around and then obviously pull away at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have games like that. I don't think anyone, I mean, maybe someone will find a team and prove me wrong, but I don't think anyone in the history of really any sport, but especially college football, just goes 70-0 every week. I think you got to have one or two of these along the way to win a chance. You got to win one or two of these along the way if you want to win it all, right?
What was it? 95 Nebraska is the only one I could think of where it seemed like it was just every week that they were just blowing teams out of the water, 80-0. But other than that, you're exactly right. There's going to be a game at some point where you're going to have to bounce back and fight back when it seems like nothing's going your way.
Yep. All right. Well, I think our guys are ready there in Happy Valley at the Penn State. There we go. My God, where are you guys? Is Kevin up on the balcony? Like, what's going on there? What is with that?
He is on the roof, so if a strong gust comes by,
yeah, he's in trouble without a rector set of a stadium. Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right, guys. Well, this is Devin and I are signing off. Tom, again, I'm sorry, but I've got another baseball game to watch tonight, so I've got to get out of here. So you enjoy your drive back from State College. I'll be a couple of adult beverages deep watching the Phillies. But nice job today otherwise, and we'll let you take over.
Go ahead if you want to respond.
No, I appreciate it. This is the first time I've ever been to Penn State that I've seen Philly stuff at Penn State. And there was a lot of Philly stuff at Penn State today. Normally it's Eagle stuff or Steeler stuff. It was a bunch of Philly stuff today.
Ohio State stuff.
People remember that they have a baseball team in October. Weird. Anyway,
thank you, Mark. Thank you, Devin. Looking forward to getting this show started now. So with no further ado, as I look and see some super chats waiting for us. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
well, Tony, I watched a football game today.
Which one?
What kind of football game was it? Well, it was a really good, exciting football game. It wasn't well played for large chunks. There were some decisions made by both coaches, by players. I did not know illegal formation was a penalty you could get while you were lining up to block a field goal. I think we all learned a lot about ourselves. But Tony, as always, it's really about the friends we made along the way.
It is. I did not make any friends. I lost a couple along the way, but that's how road trips go. But yes, Ohio State 44-31 over Penn State. Should we immediately get to some super chats and get them out of the way? Let's not get them out of the way.
Pay them the respect they deserve. Yes. Let's start with Mike Farino. Can someone explain why it took Day 3 quarters to get away from wide receiver screens when they were averaging like -1 yards per attempt? This was not a great day for Ryan Day, the play caller. It felt like it was like, well, the game plan is going to be wide receiver screens, so we're going to do that. And it was like, well, it's not working. It's like, but it's a game plan. And did we see any of the end around jet sweep motion things to make up? It's like, this isn't working. Let's see that. This to me just reminded me a lot of the 2020 Big Ten championship game, where it felt like Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson were literally the last two people in the building to realize that, hey, Trey Sermon might be having the day of his life. You should probably give him more carries. This was like Penn State has answers for absolutely everything you're doing, except for Marvin Harrison, where they have no answers. Like, why don't you just build the whole plane out of Marvin Harrison? And you sort of got there eventually, but it was like, I shouldn't be figuring this stuff out before you do.
Well, and Day addressed this, and what he always says, and I had somebody texting me like, somebody needs to ask Ryan Day about these screens, and it's like, don't worry, they will. But here's what he's going to tell you. He's going to tell you it's part of the running game, and they're looking for numbers. They're looking to soften up the defense. And then so when he was asked about it, he's like, well, that's part of the running game. And they didn't hit any. Penn State they were blowing them up, So he was disappointed in the blocking that none of those hit. But also it's about getting the defense to run all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and then you hit stuff up the middle on them. And if you look at it, that's eventually what happened. Like the middles were open, the Travion Henderson run eventually hit, but I feel like the middles were never not open. So, but they wanted those to hit the wide stuff, and it just didn't. Credit the Penn State corners. Kalen King was blowing stuff up. heard his name a bunch more than Joey Porter. And so credit those guys. Very good job getting through the blocks, making sure tackles. And so, that's what that was all about. And, Marvin's open. I don't know if you know that, but just throw it down the field to Marvin. You know who else was open, Tom? Cade Stover.
Cade Stover was open quite a bit. Did you double your bold prediction of 4? It felt like you were about in the middle of the second quarter, and Cade Stover had to have at least 4 receptions.
You got your Tommy Eichenberg though.
No, there you go. Well, it's always right in the world. Then you're right. It felt like the downfield stuff was there. Whenever and it was you're not going to complete 100% of your passes downfield, but even the ones they didn't complete downfield, there was one on the far sideline, left sideline, going left to right to Marvin Harrison, where C.J. Stroud overthrew him. But if C.J. Stroud did not overthrow him, Marvin Harrison is still running. It felt like, we talk all the time about Michigan, how Michigan does everything within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and at some point that's going to catch up with you. You have to be able to throw downfield because, like the way Ryan Day wants to stretch the field horizontally, like you can stretch the field vertically too, and you have the wide receiver unit to do that and do that effectively and make some big plays. There were a whole bunch of drives where I was kind of like, you probably just need to take at least one shot downfield every 3 plays because that's where you're seeing success, and that's ultimately if they're going to address that, that's great. Then that opens up stuff for the running game and the underneath stuff.
Yeah, no, it was just when they needed something. It was Marvin. And it looked at times like CJ kind of locked onto him, but can you blame him for that? I can't.
Yeah.
So
here's one from Jake Berkey, Super Chat. Can we agree it's time to start drawing conclusions about OSU outside of what we see in 3 games per year? In reference to the greatest offense ever statements, great win, but the same issues as last year. You did get we have seen enough Ryan Day losses that you sort of can start to see the pattern happening early. And they were kicking field goals in the first half. They couldn't really run the ball. They kind of got out of balance. You had wide receivers who weren't breaking tackles on stuff. The defense was really good, but they didn't get guys down to the ground. You had just some really boneheaded mistakes. Just the penalty on the special teams for an illegal formation while defending James Franklin is giving you an absolute gift by lining up to kick a field goal on 4th and 1. And then you're like, no, please take this back. You should take this back. And that gave James Franklin an opportunity to revisit his decision. And then he eventually made the correct one. But you can't. And then multiple false starts on. Was there an explanation? I couldn't really tell from where I was on the field. On the 2-point conversions, was there an explanation for multiple false starts on 2-point conversions?
No, he didn't say anything about that. I wonder, because there seemed to be confusion on both the offense and defensive part on who was actually at fault. So you wonder if there were some disconcerting signals, maybe, but nobody. Ryan Day wasn't asked about that. Never heard C.J. Stroud say anything about that. But the illegal formation. Defensively, I believe our buddy Marcus Hartman said it was about lining too many people up on one side of the snapper, and you can't overload, which would seem like something that you should know. Not you, clearly you should.
Yes,
you don't know that. No, we don't.
If you have a guy who is your dedicated special teams coach, it seems like that's the kind of thing that should not slide through the cracks. That was potentially. It didn't end up mattering. But that was potentially a game and season ruining penalty. That's just a dumb penalty. I mean, just a really stupid, indefensible penalty for just no reason. And you can't do that. You cannot have that. The special teams have been just like, all right this year. And they were kind of, all right last year. And, in SP Plus, it's like the offense is 1 or 2, the defense is like 8, and the special teams are like 90. And there's reasons why they're not doing a lot of, they've had a couple kickoffs out of bounds and all that stuff, but you can't be making stupid penalties that with no discernible, return. When your job there is like, number one, don't let them get a first down. Like that's job number one. And then if you block the field goal, great.
I mean, I immediately flashed back to the Taraji Mitchell leap Like that's a rule that you know that you can't do. This is another one that you know you can't do that ends up costing you. Then you had you bail out Penn State a couple of times, like the pass interference from J.K. Johnson, which was just a complete throw. Throw it up and see what happens. 3rd and long, and that worked perfectly. It worked exactly according to the plan, I'm guessing, that they had. But we've talked about the 5 big plays that Jim Knowles has baked in. I think they were right at 5. They might have hit 6 in this game, and you see the result. And as he said before, we could probably allow 7 or 8 with this offense. And you wouldn't have said that in the first 3 quarters, but that fourth quarter,
No.
Anytime you score 28 points in the fourth quarter, you're probably going to win. Anytime you give up 17 points in the fourth quarter, like Ohio State did, you might end up losing.
Yeah, and there's people in the chat saying, read the room. We want to celebrate a great win. Like, I mean, okay, that's fine, but how do you feel that the team you saw playing the first 3.5 quarters would do against Michigan? Good or really good?
Where's the game here?
Well, that would be weird.
Because I think venue plays into that. I also think styles play into that. But not being able to run the ball two weeks in a row is the concern here. And Ryan Day said, we'll see what the tape says, and then he'll know whether or not to be concerned. Even though I think you already know, now you just need to know, what am I concerned about? What exactly is the concern here? The running game is a concern, but what about it is not working? And they'll look at it and be like, well, we need to stop that, or continue to do it and fix it. And it's like, well, I don't know that the fixing is working.
This was a great example of why Ohio State wins so many games and why Ohio State wins so many games by so many points. Even Penn State, Penn State played extremely well tonight. They had turnovers, and we'll hear from James Franklin later. And the turnovers to him were kind of the story of the game. But Penn State played really well. Their offense played well. They ran the ball so much better than I thought they were going to. They held Ohio State's run game down so much better than I thought they were going to. Ohio State was not able to throw the ball the way I expected them to. And you get into the fourth quarter and you have a lead, and it's there's 9 minutes and 26 seconds left, and Penn State's got a 21-16 lead. And I have pictures of CJ Stroud on the sideline because I'm like, this is going to be potentially the defining drive of CJ Stroud's career. And frankly, you start getting into the Ryan Day era thoughts there as well, because if you blow this game and then you lose to Michigan, you're having some conversations about Ryan Day and the future there that you didn't necessarily think you were going to have. And then they go out on the field, and it's just hit the afterburners, and 3 plays, 75 yards. They get the ball back immediately on a strip sack by JT Tuimoloau, 24-yard pass, 1 play from Cade Stover. In the span of 34 seconds, they go from down 21-16 to up 30-21. Penn State goes right down the field, kicks a field goal, and then Ohio State goes right down the field, 7 plays, 75 yards. Another Travion Henderson touchdown. JT Tuimoloau, a pick 6. Like, it was 28 points in the span of 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Yeah. That is ludicrous. And the fact that Ohio State can kind of hit the Jets like that, and take a game that is they're losing and turn it into a game where they're up 3 touchdowns in the span of 6 minutes and 9 seconds on the road against a good team. I mean, that's why Ohio State can get away with this stuff against, Rutgers or, old Michigan State or Iowa or whoever. They can just hit the Jets. When you're playing better teams later, then you can't do that as much. That, I think, you got to be a little concerned, because you can't screw around for 3.5 quarters against Michigan, against Alabama, against Tennessee, against Georgia, against whoever you're playing in December and January.
No, and when Ohio State went up 30-21, I saw fans start leaving the game. And it's like, that was at 8 minutes left in the game. And they're like, well,
nope. See you later.
See ya. I guess we've seen this before, and it's we thought maybe it was going to be a win, and it's like, no, it's the same thing. And it's like, well, you score here, and it's a 6-point game, and then I'm sure some people came back, and then it's like Ohio State goes down and drives, and it's like, well, time to leave again, and then it's just some Groundhog Day action for the Penn State fans in this game. And any other super chats? We got them all.
I think we're I
Caught
think
up.
we're current on super chats. Okay, so if you do have a super chat for us, feel free to throw it down in the comments. But yeah, do you want to start with small picture or big picture?
Well, it feels like we already started with big
Okay.
picture. But go ahead. Like,
Well,
what do you got?
Well, I think first of all, this was a game where you saw, Ohio State has all the 5 stars, and Penn State is a very good team. Penn State is a top 15 team nationally. I think I was very impressed with what I saw from them. You always have trouble reconciling Penn State at home versus Penn State on the road, because Penn State goes to Ann Arbor and just no-shows it, and then Penn State comes in here and just fights Ohio State tooth and nail, and I have a difficult time reconciling those two things. But we talked on the pregame show about the fact that Penn State at home and Penn State on the road are very different things, and so you can't really directly compare the Michigan game and the Ohio State game. Super chat from Jordan Tapler. Have you guys ever seen a team have multiple bounces go their way and still lose by 2 scores? Also, is JT Tuimoloau a good player? Yes or absolutely?
First, I'll take the second part. Absolutely, he is. That was incredible. And you're like, 2 interceptions. That's a great game for a defensive end. It's like a ridiculous game. But he also had 6 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. Like, he hit all of them. Like, if there's a defensive end bingo, he hit the entire board. And it's like, it spells bingo, it spells bango, it spells bongo, anything you want it to spell.
The Thorpe Award folks were here today, the award for the nation's best defensive back. And Lathan Ransom is a semifinalist for the Thorpe Award. And I was sitting behind the Thorpe Award guy, and I was like, there's no way for me to ask, is there a way a defensive end could win your award? Because,
Well, let me ask you, does this make Lathan Ransom look bad? When it's the defensive end making all the pass defense plays, you're like, wow, he's not even the best pass defender on the team. It's 44.
That was as disruptive a game. I was very surprised with how well Penn State was able to run the ball. But the defensive line for Ohio State was every bit as disruptive as you thought they were going to be. They just were constantly in there. Clifford is running for his life on a bunch of plays. They're getting hands on passes. The Zach Smith interception, I think JT Tuimoloau. Someone batted that pass up in the air. I think it was JT Tuimoloau, but someone did. And there was another one. Penn State had 6 turnovers, 5 turnovers. It was a lot. And there was at least 1 or 2 more where there was one where Sean Clifford's rolling right and throws back across his body over the middle late, which is like 4 different never do this, football things all at once. And I think it was Tommy Eichenberg got a hand on the ball, and they ended up completing. I think it was Parker Washington who caught it, and they got a nice little gain out of it. And it was like that was a terrible decision that Ohio State, again, pressuring him, forcing bad decisions, and sometimes you're going to get away with some stuff, but he didn't get away with a lot of stuff today, and that was kind of the story.
I think maybe Jack Sawyer caused the interception, but also JT Tuimoloau did have a pass breakup as well. Didn't want to shortchange him there. Just looking at some of these numbers here. CJ Stroud, 26 of 33 for 354 yards, the 1 touchdown. I wonder what his 4th quarter was, because it was impressive. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. 6 of 8, 128 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 42, completely in control. I asked him after the game, hey, what would you think of like that 4th quarter? How would you assess your play? He's like, we played well, we did well. Just talking about the team. It's like, no,
it's just
how was, because I wanted to follow up with, and I didn't get a chance to. It's just like, you have not done this, like where it's crunch time. You need a touchdown drive. You need to be the guy that leads the offense in crunch time. Like you need to avoid a loss. You need to go win a game. But I didn't get to yell at him. But he stepped up and he answered some questions. Tom, do you know how many times he ran the ball today?
He ran the ball
4
times.
4 times.
Well, 4 times. Okay, yeah, but
2 sacks.
And it was not. There wasn't. The long was 11. Okay, he was. I don't know that he's ever going to be a guy who is picking up first downs with his legs. Like Sean Clifford had a couple first downs and everything he picked up with his legs. And that's not really CJ Stroud's game. CJ Stroud's game is get out, use your legs to extend the play, and then find a guy downfield. He's not, he's not Mike Vick. He's not Braxton Miller. He's not Terrell Pryor. That's not his game. But he, if he can just use his legs to extend the play, or at least if you can get 4 yards, turn 1st and 10 into 2nd and 6, you're just sort of staying on schedule, and that ends up making a difference because then you have your whole playbook open to you.
Well, and I said coming into this game, this could be one of those games where now the yards matter. Now each yard matters, where I may need to pick up that 3rd down running. It doesn't necessarily need to happen against Toledo. I don't need to run the ball against Northwestern. I don't need to run it against Iowa, the whole JT Barrett thing. But this is one where I'm going to need every 1st down I can get. And so you see him take off 4 times for 18 yards. And it's you keeping drives alive. You're showing a willingness to do this. So, hopefully this helps people realize when he needs to, he will.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first time he's really needed to, and he's done it. I believe he did it against Notre Dame. I believe he did it against Utah. Like when the game is on the line, he will do it. If it's like, I'm just going to hang back and see if I can squeeze this in there and hit Marvin Harrison or Cade Stover, then he does. He'll do that. It's the whole discretion being the better part of not getting hurt in a 40-point game.
Yeah, and a couple of comments on Cade Stover here right now.
Yeah.
Which the wide receivers were, good. I mean, it was Marvin Harrison and then everyone else, but it was, with Cade Stover, 6 catches, 78 yards, a touchdown, and here you're looking at the wide receivers as well. Julian Fleming's on there twice, but Emeka Ibuka had 6 catches for 53 yards. Fleming, 2 catches, 27 yards, but Marvin Harrison, man, 12 targets, 10 catches. And we talked earlier about one of the targets that was not a catch. He was open and he just got overthrown by about a foot and a half, or it would have been a touchdown.
The other one that wasn't a catch was out of bounds. He caught it out of bounds.
Was he out of bounds? It was the first play of the game, and I have a picture where it sure looks like his toe is in bounds, but maybe his heel came down. I don't know.
It may have been a toe heel thing.
Yeah,
that probably got him. But yeah, he gets open and makes a catch.
It feels like you're throwing the ball to him a lot, but every time you throw the ball to him, something good happens. So. I don't want to oversimplify things, but what if you just kept throwing the ball to your good guy until the other team showed they could stop him? I mean, that is a gross oversimplification of things, but also at some point, if they can't stop him, then they have to keep putting people over there, and then that opens up other people and other concepts.
It's like when you have a genie, and you're like, I wish I could get some wishes. Like I wish I had somewhere I could go to get some wishes. And you're like, well, you got the genie in the bottle. If you just grab the bottle, no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the ball out wide and see if there are any wishes out there. Mm-hmm. You know what?
Yeah.
Not as many wishes there.
Not any of your wishes. Yeah, that had to be very frustrating for people to watch at home. That you couldn't run the ball. You couldn't do the other thing you view as part of the running game.
And every time you go over the middle, it's like 16 yards, 18 yards, 23 yards. Yeah. I'm sure that was frustrating for a lot of people. So Marvin Harrison, 10 for 185, long of 37, just continues to be remarkable. No score. Somebody asked somebody in our bold predictions contest, their bold prediction was Marvin Harrison would not score. I was like, that's bordering on bold, and I cannot accept it, which tells you how good he is playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was also impressed with Parker Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He's a strong guy. I'm impressed with Katron Allen, that 4th down run for a touchdown, where Tommy Eichenberg had him in the backfield, and he spun out of that and picked up whatever he did. So we knew coming in he was good. They bottled up Nick Singleton pretty well. Everybody else, you give up 31 points. I don't think you leave here feeling upset about the defense,
though. No, I don't think so. And we have a super chat from Nick, Tom and Tony, heart emoji, my favorite Bucknut reporters. Oh, thank you, Nick. That's very nice. I don't think you leave feeling disappointed about the defense. I mean, frankly, the defense carried the team for the first 3 quarters of the game, because the defense, when it was 20-16 or whatever it was in the middle of the 4th quarter, it was very much if they lose this game, that is 100% on the offense and special teams. It is not on the defense. The defense did its job all day long, and I say that, and then they're also like the long Parker Washington touchdown. they had two guys right there. It was Tanner McAllister and J.K.
J.K.
Johnson. I
Johnson
think.
did not play his best game. It was a rough day for him.
You got to be able to get guys down because, I mean, one of the big differences in this game was you had that long play, and there might have been another one where they missed a tackle. Ohio State missed a tackle, and Penn State turned it into a long gain. And then when you have Emeka Egbuka out there on these little screens or whatever, he was going down. I mean, every time he was just stick wrapped down every time, and that's the difference. If you miss one tackle and the other team is not missing tackles, that kind of stuff matters when the game's a little closer.
Same with picking up third downs. You had Ohio State fail on 3rd and 1, and then the next drive, Penn State picks up like a 3rd and 8 or whatever. May have been an interference play, but they go down and score a touchdown. It changes the entire complexion of the game, just not picking up a third down or picking up a third down, and then going from there.
There were some choices made in this game, and like James Franklin game management is sort of like a long running meme almost. Ryan Day, there was a 3rd and 6, and they were down, a point or two, and it was a point where you're very obviously you're going to be kicking a field goal because a field goal would put you in the lead, take you from trailing to leading. So you're going to kick a field goal. And it's 3rd and 6, and they ran the ball with Travion Henderson. After Travion Henderson has not been running the ball, it was one of those like too clever by half things, like the James Franklin 4th and 5, where they ran was it a quarterback draw? It was 2018, the end of the 2018 game. They either ran a halfback dive or a quarterback draw or something on 4th and 5, and it was like you outthought yourself there. If you're not going to go for it on 4th down, and I understand why you're not. Throw the ball past the 6 and give yourself a chance to do it. Don't think you're going to out clever them.
Well, I think there was maybe a sack concern in knocking you out of field goal range, that sort of thing. You saw how the first half ended as well.
Yeah.
So
you're playing for a field goal there?
Clearly, you know what? You're playing for a field goal, and you're like, well, if you get 6 yards, then it's a first down. So, we can't lose. And
well, when the other team has more points than you, you can, in fact, lose. That's
and we talked before the game, pregame show, I think, when you're looking at this game, can you rely how reliant can you be on field goals? And what they have in this one, 3,
but and
that was the limit that we gave them.
Noah Ruggles missed one. So if we're gonna use the past as prologue and make our decisions based on that,
did they kick 3? The numbers got all screwed up.
Yeah, whatever you thought this game was, with 9 minutes left, it ended up being something very different than that. But so that was Ryan Day, and then James Franklin had that bizarre. It's 3rd and 1, and they throw a fade into the end zone, and then they send the kick team out, and then they get a penalty to make it 4th and 6, and then they still have the kick team. The guy misses the field goal, but Ohio State has the penalty for lining up, and then they send the team out, and then they get it, and then it was like that was the universe saving you from yourself. That's all.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Nick says, they say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, I found out my girlfriend is a Buckeye a little ways back, so that means I should propose, right? She's great otherwise, but I'm a Wolverine. I'm reminded of the great, it was one of those like Sports Center commercials or something where it was a blind date, and I think it's the guy was an Ohio State person in that one, and like tuck and roll out of the car when he finds out the girl was a Michigan fan.
Well, it's just, if you choose to have kids, how are you going to raise them? What religion are they going to be? Is it going to be in Ohio State? Or is it going to be in Michigan? You got to have these talks before you even get married.
We have some sound from JT Tuimoloau out from Postgame that you might want to throw too.
Okay.
Kevin is not very good at charades, but he is very good at producing the show. So we have JT Tuimoloau. If it wasn't Marvin Harrison, it was. Yeah. This was the JT Tuimoloau game. It felt like it. Two interceptions, the pick 6, strip sack, fumble recovery. He pretty much did it all. So here's a little sample from JT Tuimoloau after the game.
Sorry, go ahead. What kind of day you dream of as a defensive line?
Of course. I'll start during practice. I'll start the preparation.
And how satisfying is this to come back when it looked a little that fourth quarter performance by both sides?
Man, it was a great game. Defense, we just trusted each other and just stuck together and came out strong.
And the pick 6?
Pick 6. Start for preparation.
Which one was your favorite one?
It was probably when I got to PBU and I saw Zach Pickett. That was probably my favorite one.
That's not a normal thing for
a lot of people get first interception. That's not normal for defensive ends to be able to do that. What's that skill set? As a defensive end development skill set like that. Break on the ball.
I mean, I got to shout out to Coach Knowles. I mean, he's allowed us to show that, versatility, and I think him trusting me and doing those things, I got to thank him.
2 weeks ago, we were talking to you about not having sacks and getting pound, and you handled it the right way, but you feel you were kind of frustrated. So to go from not necessarily having many stats to last week you get a sack, you feel like it's starting to build for you a little bit after the game like that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we just got to keep going. We still got a long road ahead of us, and still got to continue to meet with Coach Jay and get better from there.
So is this, like, not saying you're going to have this every single game, but do people see the real Jay too?
I feel like there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more things I can clean up out there. There's a lot of little stuff I got to clean up, so we got to go from the drawing board and get better.
Coach Jay called you looking at offensive package for you now?
Oh, man, I don't know. That's not a normal way to impact the game.
JT, Coach Day called this your coming out party, so to speak. I mean, does it feel like that now? You have a hand in literally every turnover. You score a touchdown. What's just going through your mind right now?
I mean, it was a great win. I mean, this is it's not an easy place to come play. And, I know you guys heard the fans were rocking.
Yeah.
So I mean, we played a great defense and came out with the win.
But did you feel something different today? You personally, did you? I mean, you made play after play. I mean, just what was going through your mind there?
Me, 11 of us, we all wanted to come out with this win. We all wanted it really bad, and our attitude changed, and we never broke it. And that's what kept us together.
Could you sense how big this was?
So that's something from JT Tuimoloau now, who has etched his name into the defensive end lore among Penn State victors. Basically, you've got Joey Bosa, you've got Sam Hubbard, and there are others, and now you've got JT Tuimoloau. We got a super chat.
Yeah, Jeff Shirley wants to know if JT Tuimoloau will play both ways next week, defensive end and tight end.
You know what? We see Josh Fryer out there as that extra tight end. I think when you want to get the guys with the hands out there, and he's wearing an eligible number, he doesn't need to throw something on. I don't think anybody would be opposed to that. He should. Somebody asked him that, but that's a question for perhaps Kevin Wilson to see. But I did ask Zach Harrison if he and JT Tuimoloau are now honorary members of BIA, Best in America, the Ohio State defensive backs. They said no. Zach said no. They are still the rushmen. They just have really good hands.
They had as many touchdowns as Zone 6 today. So
there you go.
That was, for years and years and years, I think you've heard people talk about games are won and lost in the trenches, and why do people say that the SEC is so great? It's because they have better defensive linemen than most other people in the country and all that stuff. You saw that today. That is Ohio State having that level of player. Zach Harrison, 5-star. Jack Sawyer, 5-star. Tuimoloau, 5-star. Deron Vincent, 5-star. Mike Hall, top 50 player nationally. Tyleik Williams. Yeah, Tyleik Williams was impressive. I mean, it was, that is a defensive line taking over. And it's been so interesting to watch how productive the defensive line has been this year as compared to last year. Last year, it was like, well, they almost got there. Well, they all, almost, not quite, so close, maybe next time. And then this year, they have just been there and just wrecking and just constantly just getting, getting in quarterbacks' faces, forcing turnovers, forcing bad passes, all that kind of stuff.
Buckeyes no tackles for loss in the first half, 4 in the second. Penn State had 5 in the first half, just 2 in the second. Little tale of two cities there.
Nick wants to know, are we concerned with the Ohio State running game? And I think you almost have to be.
Yeah. No, and we started the show off basically with that, and people wanted talk about the winning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a concern, and not having Mayan Williams out there, who I think has shown that he is the more consistent guy. We know what Travion Henderson can give you when the hole is there and he sees it. But yeah, no, it's a concern when you rush for under 100 yards. And 41 of that is on a 1 carry. So you're looking at 25 carries for 98 yards. Basically, it's not good. It's not good enough. And it is a concern. And it's something that they are going to work to fix, but they were doing that all last week as well. And so this wasn't just, last week, well, Iowa was doing something they weren't doing before. I know the safeties are moving around in this game, but it's the defensive line or the offensive line for Ohio State was getting pushed back. Like they weren't necessarily getting their own push. So there's a lot to be concerned with in that area. And I'm sure it'll get better for a couple of weeks. But you go back to what did they do against Iowa? What did they do against Penn State? That's probably what they're going to do against Michigan.
Yeah, I think you need to, as a fan, prepare yourself for they may not be able to run the ball against Michigan, and what does that mean, and what do they have to do? How do you work around that? Mayan Williams left the game I think it was right at the end of the first quarter, and then he was out during Carmen, Ohio. It looked like 2 fingers on his right hand, his ring finger, and his pinky finger on his right hand in some kind of a splint, and then also had his right arm in a sling. So I when I saw it, I thought maybe dislocated finger of some kind or broken finger or something like that. But that's he has been a really important piece of that run game. Because Trayvon Henderson sometimes is working and sometimes isn't his ball, and having that second different back with a different running style really has been something that's been beneficial for them. RC wants to know how much of the run struggles is on poor scheme, and I mean that's a Ross Fulton, Devin Radcliffe, Justin Whitledge kind of question, but I don't know that I think it's poor scheme. I think it might be more, sometimes the line is not getting the push that you need to get.
Well, and with the zone blocking, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it gets a little too thin at times. That happened last week against Iowa. But you look at what Michigan was able to do running a bunch of power. And Ohio State, I don't know that I saw any pulling guards at any point in this, or I didn't see Luke Whippler pulling. It was a lot of zone stuff, I think. And again, you guys may have watched what Devin and Mark had to say, but they scheme so well with the passing game that I can't just think I can't bring myself to think, well, they can only scheme one thing. They don't know enough about the other. They're doing the wrong things with the other. There is some predictability there that is a concern as well. But again, the under center stuff, they want to do that, and then the play action off of that when it comes, and there's you build these tendencies so that you can break them at the right time. I don't know how many tendencies they broke in this one, but it's a concern, and it's going to be a concern until it no longer is. And it feels like it could come back at any time. Like this is they run for 240 yards next week, but does it mean anything?
Yeah, no, not really. I don't know that I could see anything in the Northwestern and Iowa and Maryland games that would make me definitively stand up and bang the table and say it's fixed. No problem. Everything is fixed. There was we have a Cade Stover interview, and we'll see how the audio is because it was in fact very loud apparently. But Cade Stover did have himself a heck of a game. 6 catches, had that touchdown, a really big touchdown late. So let's go and hear a little bit from Cade Stover after the game.
Yeah, I've tried to. Yeah, I like it.
So that rumble bumble how big is it? Not only for you, but to do that for your team in that kind of moment, what does that say?
I mean, it's nice to get trusted with the ball in that situation. So you better make the most of it when you get it.
Do you like the edge blocks for touchdowns better, or the one that you catch for a touchdown?
I'd stop. As long as it's scoring, I really don't care.
Can you take us through? This is the replay. Edge guy, right?
Yep.
And now to the backer at the second level.
Yep.
DeJuan steals off the other side. Bang. What's that like in that moment when you guys make a block like that for a go-ahead touchdown?
I mean, it's good when you see him break that. You know that not many people in the country are going to catch him, so he's trying to chase him.
Can you take? I mean, you took 2 guys out on that play. Can you just take us through what your assignment is, what you're trying to do there?
Win the C gap right there. Once you win the C, go for the next most dangerous. And he was the next most dangerous, so I picked him up too.
Is that just normal to you? Like that to me is that's as good a blocking as you're going to find in college football.
I like to say it's textbook, but yeah, I mean, I like
How important is that for a tight end to be able to do that?
Super important. I mean, we kind of all the tight ends at Ohio State. I mean, we've always tried to pride ourselves on being like low around the tight ends, and it's nice to finally make plays in the passing game like that and be able to keep showcasing my blocking skills.
So when you're running down the field after Trey as he's heading to the end zone there, how do you feel in that moment when you know you've done your job?
Good. I mean, you just feel good. When you see that and you see your brothers make a play like that, you feel good.
be in it. You feel frustration with those in the mind. It's not going to be.
Yeah, no, we don't feel any frustration. Not really. A lot of teams, we got teams in the past that we never splits it right there. And like, going start pointing fingers at each other. I mean, that locker room, we all knew that it wasn't the best half of football, and we came out of it. So we let the locker room take down.
Tom, I think we see more confirmation from Kate Stover that this is, in fact, the year of the tight end.
I don't know what other year it could possibly be.
And why would anybody doubt it? They see it week in and week out.
We've talked a bunch about the Ohio State against Penn State, and Michigan against Penn State, and that those teams have Iowa as a common opponent. Iowa currently beating Northwestern 20-0. If you're wondering how next weekend's going to go, but we got a super chat real quick first. Nick is saying nice things about Kevin, but we have to read it because it's super chat. Okay, we need a shout out for Kevin. The man is on point and is hauling way too much gear for you guys to not be electric on camera, which you are. And yes, it may look like we're electric on camera. That's actually the sun shining directly through the press box window, directly on us. Except Kevin has hopefully blocked the sun, which has made us not look like we are literally on fire. So
I was going to say my electricity is due to my 8 Mountain Dews today, and little else. Oh, and a cup of ice cream.
Oh, there you go. Yes. You can't have a trip to Penn State without a little creamery ice cream in the press box. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that. The comparable games from Michigan and Iowa, Michigan and Penn State, and then Ohio State against those two teams. There you can see it on the screen. Unless you're listening as a podcast, in which case you'll have to start watching this as a post game. But Ohio State, against Iowa, doubled Michigan's point total. Basically the same number of total yards, but just completely throttled Iowa. Michigan just, Iowa did basically nothing against Ohio State all day. And Michigan wasn't super, explosive against Iowa. They held Iowa to 35 rushing yards, but only had 172 yards of rushing, 155 yards of passing. But Ohio State, won by basically double. So, I think you can look at that. And, Michigan had to go to Iowa State or to Iowa City, and Iowa had to come to Columbus. So that's probably part of it. Well, guess what? Michigan got to play Penn State at home, and Ohio State had to come to Happy Valley. And those are two teams that I think are very different teams when you play them at home versus play them on the road. Maybe
More than any other Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
Like those two teams, Iowa and Penn State, are very different on the road and at home.
Yeah. And that's a good home atmosphere. That's also places that are not always the easiest to get into in terms of travel and all that kind of stuff. All that probably plays into it. Do we have the Penn State numbers? These will not look quite as favorable for Ohio State. But Michigan ended up with 418 yards rushing, and Ohio State barely, Ohio State
98?
98, and not as many as that might sound like in reality. It was
25 for like 60 yards when you remove the long run.
And we talked about the fact that on the pregame show or on the Friday live stream, whichever one it was, about the fact that you can't really just kind of hold these as like, well, look, these are the same things. Here we go. So Michigan, 563 yards of total offense. Ohio State 452 against Penn State, but Ohio State giving up 483 yards of total offense to 268 for Penn State for Michigan for Penn State against Michigan. And what's interesting is Penn State ran for the exact same number of rushing yards against Ohio State and Michigan, but Michigan ran for about 300 more yards rushing than Ohio State did. I don't know that I look at those numbers and I draw any real firm conclusions from them, because they're different teams playing at different times in different places and different matchups and all that kind of stuff. To me, I think that the biggest concern has to be the Ohio State running game right now. Of all the things that were on there, I think the Ohio State running game has to be the biggest concern for Buckeye fans, with Michigan looming now 4 weeks out.
No, I agree with that. I think Sean Clifford going for 371 is impressive. It's eye-opening. You didn't expect that, but also he has the potential to do that if the receivers make some plays, which they did. I did have a Michigan fan in my mentions on Twitter because we were talking poorly about Penn State, like when they played Michigan, like we shouldn't have, and then watching them, I kept getting like score updates, and with this game, like Michigan's better than Ohio State because look what Ohio State is struggling with Penn State. But if you take those two games, the two common opponents, and you like throw all of the stats in there, I think Ohio State is probably looking better score-wise, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. You just can't draw that kind of conclusion.
And you can't just
from
choose one
two
game over
separate-
another.
Right, exactly. And when does Michigan play Michigan State? Is that tonight or is
Yeah,
that going on tonight? Okay, so we will have a third data point there, and best of luck to Michigan putting up as dominating a performance against Michigan State as Ohio State did. And again, Michigan fans will point to that and go, "Well, you can't compare those because that's an in-state rivalry game." It's like, yes, exactly,
that's correct.
True. In fact, no one is arguing with
The
you on
only
this.
game you can point to is this one.
Rutgers too. Rutgers is the one. Rutgers, always Rutgers.
That's a rivalry, though.
That's true. So we have let's see, what, 4 games left? Yeah, 4 games left. Oh, we got a super chat. Nick says if Mayan stays healthy, OSU run numbers are much better, and I don't think. Are you going to find any argument on that from either one here? Or?
Nope.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's the answer because I still think there's some concerns with the running the offensive line, but I think he gives you more answers and he makes what's out there better, and he can do more with less. He's one of those guys where Travion Henderson can do a lot with a lot. Mayan Williams can do a lot with not as much, and I think they missed that. They also missed building that momentum and getting the running game going, getting the offensive line going, that confidence going, the defensive line getting tired, getting frustrated, and Mayan Williams, he loosens the lid, and then Travion Henderson can pop it off.
So super chat from Jeff Straley. How much a dome Ohio Stadium? Weather could be an issue without a run game. Mayan needs to get healthy.
A dome in Ohio Stadium?
A dome in Ohio Stadium, yes. You're probably going to run into national historic landmark issues there.
Well, you know what? Just like a blanket, just canvas type of thing, The Romans did it. The Greeks did it.
Has technology at least stagnated in the last 2,000 years or perhaps improved?
Still making stuff with cement, man.
It's true.
So
It's true.
concrete, can't beat concrete and canvas.
One thing that we have found during the course of this season and doing these post-game shows is the interest in the opposing team's coach is always incredibly high. So I went over to the James Franklin press conference. It was not very long. It was 5-6 minutes, something like that. He had some interesting stuff to say. His perspective on this, obviously coming from the other side of things, from what Ohio State fans, the other side of things, from how Ohio State fans are looking at this game, certainly. But his team played their butts off.
Yeah.
His team played really well, and I was wondering going into that, is that encouraging to you that you came into this with you came into this with playing the number 2 team in the country, and your team really, really played so well and so hard for 3.5 quarters and was playing them dead even. Is that encouraging to you? Or is that when Ohio State does hit the afterburners and they just have their talent is just so much better, is that discouraging? So, here I want to let you guys hear from James Franklin, what he had to say after the game. We'll have about 5 minutes there, and we'll be back with more.
Always appreciate everybody coming out and covering and supporting Penn State football. First of all, you got to give Ohio State credit. Really talented team. I thought we played our tail off. Obviously, first half, we were able to overcome the turnovers and stay in the game and battle, but you can't turn the ball over that many times against that type of opponent and think you're going to be successful. Something we, for the most part, we have done a good job of this year, but we did not today. Thought we played hard. Did some really, really good things. There's a ton of stuff to be proud of, but there's just as much stuff that we got to correct. Tomorrow. There's a lot of corrections, obviously, that we have to make. But to me, the game starts and ends with the turnovers. You can't give that type of team a short field that many times and be successful. It's going to make it really challenging. So open up the questions.
James, how would you assess Sean's performance, and do you expect more from him than to turn it over 4 times?
Yeah, I thought he played gutsy and made some big-time plays, but obviously you can't have the turnovers. The one, I don't know if it's necessarily his fault. It was a pressure and a strip sack. But the other ones, whether it left the ball inside or whether got to find a throwing lane around, really athletic, long defensive ends, you got to find a throwing lane. So I thought he played gutsy and he did some really good things, but obviously there's some things that we got to get cleaned up too.
James, as a coach, how do you reconcile being up in the fourth quarter on the number 2 team in the country, and then literally 7-8 minutes later you're down 20? How do you evaluate your team when something like that happens so quickly?
Yeah. Again, the game starts and ends, with the turnovers. We knew this type of opponent we were going to have to be able to score points on. They're explosive on the offensive side of the ball. They're explosive on the defensive side of the ball. Played our tail off, but made too many critical mistakes.
James, how do you assess the play of your defense? You held them to 16 points, forced a bunch of field goals, but then inevitably they exploded for some points in spite of the turnovers. Can you talk about how your defense played overall? How do you assess that afterward?
Yeah, I thought we played our tails off, especially a bunch of short fields. I think they had the one drive, right after we went down and got the lead again. They had the one long drive that they put together. We went tempo a couple times, but for as many short fields as they had tonight, they played really well. Obviously, the one guy we struggled with is Marvin Harrison. He's obviously a really good player, and they went to him time and time again. But overall, we played really well.
James, what do you say to your sideline after those turnovers, or do you leave it up to your position coaches to talk to your players?
Yeah, it's impossible to talk to your sideline.
Talk to like Sean or somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's not the time right there to critique. They're feeling bad enough at the moment, so you try to support them and move on to the next play. We'll make those corrections on Sunday.
James over here. How would you describe the gap between Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State?
They got good football teams, and we played really well against Ohio State today. Had a chance to win the game, made too many mistakes in critical moments, which you can't do against a top-ranked opponent like that.
You guys converted 3 fourth downs, so what did that do just to energize your team and keep you guys in it? Obviously, you didn't have the result you wanted, but what did converting those 4th downs really do for your team?
Yeah, coming into this season, we wanted to be aggressive on 4th down. Coming into this game, you look at their game last week. We knew we were going to have to be able to score some points against these guys and take some risks and take some chances. Obviously, the 3 that we converted were big and allowed us to score points and allow us to score touchdowns. We're going to have to take on some of those risks. But again, the margin of error against these type of opponents is very small.
James, it seemed like you guys were a completely different offense in the first half, even schematically than you had been a lot earlier this year. How much were you guys saving for this game, and how would you evaluate that first half offensive performance and sort of doing those new things?
Yeah, I thought some of the things that we did from a change-up perspective in terms of formations and personnel groups, I think helped us, gave them some kind of things to think about. They weren't as confident with our formations, what we were going to run out of our formations. So I think it was a nice change up, and I think allowed us to move the ball. We moved the ball pretty effectively against that team. So I thought we did some nice things. Again, I don't mean to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but besides the turnovers, I thought we did some pretty good things on both sides of the ball.
James, Parker Washington put together the most productive performance of his.
All right, so that's apparently enough of James Franklin. I thought it was very interesting. There's a lot you could chalk that up to, with that game because they played so well, but they, the turnovers. I don't know that I guess the turnovers were obviously a big story. I don't know that was like the single deciding factor. I kind of looked at it as, I mean, Ohio State, just the talent in Ohio State just sort of shone through to me.
Well, there are 4 turnovers, three interceptions, and one lost fumble. The first 2 interceptions, I don't even know that Ohio State really capitalized on those.
No.
That's just a wasted possession for Penn State, which I don't, were you going to score a touchdown on those drives? Were you going to score 6 points? Was it going to matter, at the end? So I don't think it was I think you just got worn down. And then the big plays in the fourth quarter. Ohio State won the fourth quarter, and that was it. And when you play a close game, you only need to win the last quarter, and Ohio State won it going away.
Well, and we're going to get to some questions now. So if you guys want to punch up some questions on the screen, we'll start going through those. But, it's interesting to me that how often this is how the Ohio State-Penn State game plays out, where, you go back to 2017, Penn State has a big lead in Columbus, and then Ohio State comes back and, wins 39-38 with a big, 21 points or whatever in the fourth quarter. 2018 here, Penn State's got a 2-score lead with 8-9 minutes left in the game, and you get the Benjamin Victor touchdown and the KJ Hill touchdown. Ohio State wins a 1-point game. 2019, I don't know if there's a comeback in that one, but it was, a close game where, again, Ohio State just kind of outlasted them in the end. 2020 was kind of, a real weird one, but and then 2021 was similar in the Ohio State's not scoring touchdowns, they're kicking field goals, so they're keeping it close. Penn State didn't. I don't think Penn State ever took the lead in that one, but it was kind of, again, Ohio State did just enough. And then the talent in Ohio State, another defensive lineman scoring a touchdown in that one. Last year was Jerron Cage, this year JT Tuimoloau, but these games sort of follow a similar script, and it's a little different. And there's always a little bit of an exciting mystery of how will Ohio State come back and win the game in the end, but you sort of know that seems like how it's going to play out.
Yeah, and in the first half, Ohio State did not play as well as they could, and Penn State played about as well as they could. So you figure the second half, are you going to be able to do that 2 more quarters? And the answer is Penn State may be able to play as well as they can, but eventually Ohio State's going to be playing well and get clicking, and that just the depth, the talent just eventually starts to rise. The recruiting starts to pay off. JT Tuimoloau, they worked their tails off to recruit him, and they brought him from Washington and waited patiently for him. And he, just announced himself to the rest of the nation in this game. As a bunch of people tuned in to watch Ohio State lose. Once it's close in the fourth quarter, you're losing in the fourth quarter, 9 minutes left, Ohio State is losing. Let's turn that game on, and boom, who's this JT Tuimoloau guy?
Yeah.
Super chat?
Yeah, we got a super chat from Nick. When y'all do the OSU versus Maize and Blue pregame show through Mark Rogers, can you please include Tom with Tony and Kevin against Steve Deese this year? Got to have the full crew versus the Snark King, Steve. I think the last thing I need to do is one more podcast that week. We have a lot of stuff planned for that week.
Yeah,
so
no.
Don't worry. We will have plenty of coverage for you, plenty of content for you that the week of the Ohio State Michigan game.
We are already 2 podcasts a day, and in Michigan week we always have to ramp it up somehow, and there aren't enough hours in the day, days in the week for that week, and yet we try to do more. One thing we don't normally do is have guests, because we don't need people talking. We talk, and we don't need people thinking they're smarter than us, because I already have that on this show. And I don't need 2 people like that, and I know Steve would be.
There was a question earlier about whether Trevion Henderson is still dealing with a nagging foot injury. I don't know that anyone is. I mean, I don't think he's 100%, but I don't think anyone's 100% this time of year. That's kind of something you just sort of hear. So, he has been well enough to play the last couple of weeks. So,
well, you feel bad for Mayan. Comes in with a bad knee and leaves with a bad knee and a bad shoulder and a bad hand. Who knows what else? It's just that time. It's when you wake up later in the week, it's going to be November, and as we know, Tom, November is for contenders.
That's. I think I heard that once. Guy in a sweater vest. Obviously, Tony Gerderman's burner account says this game was like a steak, too juicy, and not done well enough. It was an exciting game. It was an interesting game. It was not a particularly well played game for long stretches, but it was a really entertaining game.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, when you get a game down in the fourth quarter, and craziness ensues, and Penn State fights their way back, and this is what you wanted to see. Maybe the Ohio State fans didn't want to see this until the end. Then it's like, oh, this is a great time.
Well, we cover a lot of Ohio State games, and you usually, as you're pulling into the parking lot before the game, it's, the big burning question is, will they win by 40 or 50 this week? This is one where you pulled into the parking lot. It's like, yeah, there's a way they don't win this game today. And then, that's rare. And then to be in a game where in the fourth quarter, you could, there's a legitimate chance you could see this team losing. That you really don't get very often. And, they did what they needed to do, but I think it's also, one of those great games where what a coaches like best. They like a game where your team wins, but you've got a lot of stuff to teach off of and learn from as you're moving forward. And that, that's what they got today.
Yeah, Ryan Day loves the adversity and being forced into answering the call, and they did that. And this is something that you can draw on. This is a good thing for moving forward for Michigan. Mm-hmm. You want to be prepared for that game. This helped get that done. Kevin, Super Chat from Uptown Daniel. Can one of y'all ask Ryan why we don't come out throwing downfield and open up the run game? He keeps showing these screens that don't work. Yeah, that was you were not the first person to suggest that on the show today. They did throw the ball downfield, and it didn't open up the running game. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree. I thought do some throwing to run, but they threw and then they still couldn't run. So I think what they could have done more of is just throw to throw.
Yeah, and I think if you have Marvin Harrison, who had 12 targets, 10 of them were catches. One of them was a toe tap on the sideline where I guess his heel maybe hit out of bounds. And the other one was he was open. He had 3 yards on the Penn State defender, and Stroud just overthrew him by just a foot or two. When you have 12 targets for a guy and it's 10 catches and 2 almost catches for big plays, make a stupid throw to force the ball into him. I mean, if for huge chunks of this game, it felt like Penn State had answers for the Ohio State run game, the Ohio State, short passing game, the throws to Mike Ibuka, the throws to Julian Fleming. Yeah. They didn't really have an answer for Cade Stover, and they definitely didn't have an answer for Marvin Harrison. So it was kind of why don't they just build the whole plan out of the Marvin Harrison kind of game? And, you obviously can't really do that, but you can try.
Yeah. Kevin.
We have the CJ Stroud sound now if you want to throw it.
All right. So let's go here from CJ Stroud, who had, another week where we're kind of going, well, it was a pretty good game. He finished, 26 of 33, 354 yards, 1 touchdown, only 1 touchdown, Tony. What's wrong with CJ Stroud? And also 6 carries for 5 yards, but did pick up 18, lost a couple on sacks, but, made some plays with his legs, made some plays with his arm. And, at the end of the game, there was a moment when I thought this is going to be like a defining drive for CJ Stroud, and it was 3 plays, 75 yards, bing, bang, boom, touchdown. So let's hear from CJ Stroud.
Okay, guys, we have CJ here. We have Marvin Harris.
You got some water? Water? You're good. I'll get it later. CJ, they go up nice. And I was kind of watching you before you took that field on that last drive. Do you want to be left alone in those moments? Are you talking to people? How are you in those moments when you know you're getting ready to take the field on the drive that is basically you need to score?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank God and have the opportunity to come out here and have an opportunity to go play with my brothers in a great atmosphere. But like you said, I don't really want to be left alone, but at the same time, I like to be focused and locked in. I don't want nobody messing with me or nothing, but my teammates, I'm willing to talk to them about the play or about the run or whatever the case may be. So it's open communication.
CJ fought back there in the fourth quarter. Coach Day said over and over, toughness.
Water, CJ.
What do you think this win and the way you guys fought for it means?
It don't mean nothing to us, but we're a tough team. We ain't trying to prove nothing to nobody, I feel. I definitely think that we're trying to prove really to ourselves what type of team we are, and I think we did that today.
What changed for you guys late in the fourth quarter?
We already knew it was going to be a fourth quarter game, so we weren't surprised with anything. We got to just be better in the red zone on offense and convert more on third down. But other than that, I think that we had a solid day on offense, and the defense did a good thing by keeping them shut for about 3 drives, and we got to reward them for that.
CJ, speak to the toughness, whatever. Marvin gets banged up on that one play, comes back in. The 3rd and 10 throw from you to him was as clutch as it gets.
What
does he mean, man?
We know they were in a zero looking type of thing, and if they were going to drop out, then I had something else planned. But I'm glad when they run zero and leave Marv one-on-one. So But I think Penn State is a great defense. The corners on their team were really good. The safety number 16, 23. A lot of good pieces on that defense. So I'm really proud of my guys to be fighting.
But you throw that fastball in there to him. I mean, it's a big play in the game and stuff. And he makes the catch obviously.
Yeah,
and stuff. But what did you just say about Marvin? I mean,
he's a great player, man. I mean, like I said before, it's his work ethic. It's what he does when nobody's looking, and it doesn't surprise me. You know what I mean? Even with Mex, even on that second down, he ran a great route. Kind of a weird position on the field. I tried to bang it in on him without throwing an interception because Mike was pushing.
Yeah.
Even Meg had a great game, including Juke being back home. So I'm really proud of those.
As far as adversity and what you guys overcame today, what kind of win was this for your team?
It's a great win. So I mean, we're really happy with how we played today, but we got to move on, learn from our mistakes, and go on to Northwestern.
How would you assess your fourth quarter?
Buckeye football, I mean, we know that it gets tough in the fourth quarter. I think we're a fourth quarter type of team. At least we try to be. So we work for that in the off season. Pushing sleds, lifting weights with Coach Mick, Coach Quinn, Coach Nico, Coach Higgs, Coach KP. So those are the dudes who are why we are so good at fourth.
You haven't been able to have many of those?
Last play of the first half. It was just miscommunication between me and Coach Day. Nothing too extreme. I should have maybe just thrown the fade up. I knew I was going to get 0, and I just got to get the ball in my hand. I wanted Max to run a one-step slant right away so I can catch him off guard. They were kind of like backed up 3 yards in the end zone. But, I mean, it is what it is. I appreciate Coach Day having the trust in me to move the ball down the field, and I think we did that pretty good.
You know that, like, the whole you running thing has been a conversation since you basically got here, took over at the start of today. You maybe had to do it a little bit more in the other game before. When did you kind of realize that maybe you were going to have to use your legs a little bit more than you did?
I'm willing to do anything to win. So, I mean, I'm blessed to have the ability to be able to run and things like that. But at the same time, I mean, I try to just do what's best to win. And if that's staying in the pocket, give my guy a chance, I'll do such. But that's taking off and trying to get 1, 2, 3, 4, or taking off big, I think I'll try to do it.
CJ Stroud surprisingly showing he will do what it takes to win, despite the doubts of many that he could.
Yeah, the things have been okay as far as the Ohio State offense goes. Not always 100% consistent, but that was coming into that drive where they were down 21-16 and there's 9.5 minutes left in the game. It was I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a defining moment for him, and then they just hit the Jets and just pulled away and 28 points. And yeah, I mean, it really kind of is. And, it probably won't be the final defining drive. He will probably have some moments against Michigan coming up. And
remember when JT Barrett had a defining drive against Penn State? What happened the next week?
Yeah.
Super chat?
Yes, super chat. Yeah, super chat from Brickhouse 20. I disagree with the false start flags and the 2-point conversion. Both times were reaction to Penn State in the neutral zone. Thoughts? Now, I didn't have a great view of that.
Well, the second one I thought was offside, and there, like I said, both of them had pointing going on, and so this may have been. If you react to somebody that doesn't go into the neutral zone, that's a false start. So maybe that's what the refs were saying.
Well, and Ryan Day, I was obviously down on the sideline and have a picture of Ryan Day, talking sort of animatedly with the line judge about things. I would certainly assume that was the argument he was making, but we'll
Ryan
see.
Day with a raspy voice after the game, by the way.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Michael Baumert says defense was feast or famine. Offense was stubborn about the run against an overloaded front with safety support. Curious how Ross would have handled PSU's scheme. And yes, we'll have Ross on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show a little later on in the week to talk, kind of do a little schematic deep dive. But yeah, I mean, I think that was sort of the conclusion everyone reached was, you're not running the ball. You're not able to run it. You're not able to, the screen stuff isn't working. You kind of want to see them take a shot downfield. They have the personnel to do it.
When we talk about Jim Knowles baking these big plays, it is a little bit like these cooking shows where the chef is creating all this stuff and the judge is like, I don't know if that's really going to go together. And then you taste it. It's like, oh, I was surprised that this went so well together. And you give up 350 yards passing and you give up 31 points. It's like, well, you had 2 defensive ends with interceptions. You got a pick 6 and you had some sacks in the second half. So I didn't know this was going to taste so good, but it worked out.
The mystery ingredient this week was defensive end turnover forced, and that worked out just fine. Next one from Philip Pulio. Feels like way too much screen pass and not enough downfield stuff for most of the game.
And again, we talked about that at the outset because Ryan Day was asked about that. it's for one, it's about stretching the defense and sending the defense back and forth over the course of a game, gets them tired, gets them winded. But also they were expecting to get more yards out of that. It's not, and we've talked about this in years past, where they're not just trying to get 0 yards. Penn State was just blowing those guys up, and they needed to block those better, and they thought they would be able to hit a couple. But like Emeka Egbuka had no chance like on any of his. Like as soon as he got it, he would be getting hit by Kalen King or whomever else. And so they just really, really defended those plays well. But also I think they were predictable in those plays, which makes them easier to trigger on and to defend.
Yeah, but I think you do need to give Penn State a lot of credit. Penn State tackled very well today, very, very well. Ohio State, sometimes some guys tackled well, some guys did not tackle particularly well, and you saw some short passes turn into long passes as a result of that. But yeah, I think on the whole, I mean, this is Ohio State goes on the road to Penn State and emerges with a multi-score win. It did not feel like it was a multi-score win in the middle of the fourth quarter, but then kind of hit those afterburners and went on their way. We need to get to our shot of the game segment this is going to be from the fourth quarter, surprisingly, from the fourth quarter of the game when much of the action occurred. This is Emeka Egbuka pulling in a ball. I mean, you can see exactly how tight the window is here. I mean, these are the throws that C.J. Stroud is making, and this was the ball that set up. Penn State had just gone right down the field to cut it to 30-24 with a field goal. This was the long pass to Emeka Egbuka that set up Trevion Henderson's 7-yard touchdown run that kind of sealed it. That made it 37-24 again. That it ended up being a very, very big play, and I mean, you can every once in a while I'll get a shot like this where you can see the defender's hand, the ball, and the receiver's hand, and it's like here's one from the Sugar Bowl a couple of years ago where I think it was a Luke Farrell touchdown in the end zone. And I don't know how the ball possibly missed. The defender's hand is literally 1 inch above the ball and goes right into Luke Farrell's hand. So, yeah, every once in a while you get one that you get it just right. You get you can really give people a sense for exactly how, fine the margins are that these guys are working with.
All right, that is about going to do it for us. I want to thank you all for tuning in.
One more time, he kicked in another $2 to be ready again.
Obviously, Tony Gerdeman's burner account game was like a steak, too juicy, not done well,
but still edible. And it only cost you $24, and you only got one side, but you did get a full salad bar and some ice cream.
Tony, would you say that despite Ohio State's early lead, Penn State was able to catch up?
No, they didn't. Ohio State won by multiple scores, so they did not completely catch up, but we are getting chased out of here. So want to thank you all for joining us. So sorry we got to get out of here, but thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for tuning in for this now 2 hours or so of 2.5 hours of this show. So that will do it from us from here in Happy Valley. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.